The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across my rose bushes, the scent of jasmine heavy in the air. "Mother, we need to talk," Veronica said, her voice tight. Julian stood beside her, radiating an uncomfortable politeness that grated on me. "It's about your well-being," Marcus added, appearing from behind a trellis as if he'd sprung from the earth. Christopher, predictably, was late, but they couldn't start without him, could they? This little performance required all the players. He finally sauntered in, phone glued to his ear, muttering about a business call. He gave me a cursory wave before ending the call. "So," he said, flashing a smile that never quite reached his eyes, "what's the family meeting about?" He knew exactly what it was about. They all did. "We're worried about you, Mom," Veronica started, her voice laced with a false concern that made my stomach churn. "You've been forgetful lately, misplacing things, making unusual decisions." She exchanged a glance with Julian, who nodded stiffly. "We think it's time you had some help." Help? Such a loaded word. I knew what kind of help they had in mind. Help managing my affairs. Help spending my money. Help easing me out of the picture. $50 million casts a long shadow, doesn't it? It twists even familial love into something grotesque. "Unusual decisions?" I asked, feigning confusion. "Such as," Marcus jumped in, eager to contribute. "Well, that donation to the Ferret Sanctuary, for example. A rather large sum, wasn't it?" He said it as if donating to a ferret sanctuary was akin to funding a criminal enterprise. As if I, in my 78 years, had suddenly lost the capacity to decide where my own money went. "Ferrets are delightful creatures," I replied mildly, pruning a deadhead from a prize-winning David Austin rose. "They deserve our support." The truth was, I despised ferrets, but this donation was part of a larger game, a game they couldn't even begin to comprehend. "And the incident with the gardener," Christopher chimed in, his tone dripping with condescension, "accusing him of stealing your what was it? Your diamond earrings, only to find them in your jewelry box a day later." "I merely misplaced them," I said calmly. "It happens. It did happen. I'd placed them there myself, after ensuring the gardener had seen me wearing them. A small piece of the puzzle, carefully placed." Veronica took a step closer, her voice softening, but the steel in her eyes betrayed her. "Mom," she said gently, "we just want what's best for you. We think we know that you're not quite yourself these days. We think you need specialized care, specialized care." The euphemism hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I looked at them, my own children, their faces a mixture of avarice and feigned concern. Julian shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my gaze. He was a newcomer to this family, and I sensed a flicker of unease in his eyes, a hint of discomfort at the charade they were performing. He might be greedy, but he wasn't cruel. Not yet, anyway. Veronica, on the other hand, had embraced this deception with chilling enthusiasm. "So," I said, my voice steady, "you've decided I'm incompetent." "Just like that. It's not a decision we've taken lightly, Mother," Marcus said, his tone almost pleading. "Almost? We've consulted with professionals," Veronica added quickly. "They agree that you need supervision." Supervision. Another carefully chosen word. Supervision of my assets, of my life, of my very existence. I could see the dollar signs flashing in their eyes, the anticipation of the inheritance they believed was already within their grasp. They saw me as a frail old woman, easily manipulated, easily dismissed. They saw me as an obstacle to their desires. They were wrong. I understand, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I looked at each of them in turn, letting my gaze linger on Veronitsa's face. I'll cooperate. I'll do whatever you think is best. A collective sigh of relief swept through them, palpable as the jasmine scent in the air. They had won, or so they thought. The corners of my mouth twitched, a flicker of a smile I quickly suppressed. Let them celebrate their victory. Let them savor their anticipated riches. Christmas was just around the corner, and I had a very special gift prepared for them. A gift that would expose their greed and leave them with nothing but the bitter taste of their own betrayal. The game, my dear children, had just begun. Rain lashed against the windows of my sunroom, mirroring the storm brewing inside me. Just last week, Veronica had suggested, ever so sweetly, that perhaps I should consider moving into a lovely assisted living facility. She'd even picked out a brochure, pictures of smiling seniors playing bingo and doing water aerobics. It's for your own good, Mother, she'd insisted, her eyes just a little too bright. You deserve to be pampered. I sipped my tea, the porcelain cup warming my hands. Pampered. Yes, pampered by nurses who'd monitor my every move, by orderlies who'd decide when I could eat and sleep, all while my children picked apart my life's work, the fortune I'd built brick by painstaking brick. I watched the rain blur the garden outside. The roses I'd personally cultivated now bowed under the weight of the downpour. They seemed to reflect my own weariness. I closed my eyes, inhaling the familiar scent of Earl Grey. It had been my ritual for years, a moment of quiet contemplation before the day began. But lately, even these small comforts felt tainted by the subtle anxieties that had crept into my life, like insidious vines slowly strangling the joy from my days. It had started subtly, casual inquiries about my finances, suggestions that I update my will, just to be prepared. Mother, Marcus had said, his voice a low murmur, wouldn't want any complications later on. Complications. I'd built my empire from nothing, weathering economic downturns and betrayals that would have crushed a lesser woman. And now, my own children saw me as a complication. I ran a hand over the smooth mahogany of my desk, a gift from my late husband, Edward. We'd started this business together, a small trading company that had blossomed into something far beyond our wildest dreams. Remember, Jacqueline, he'd said to me once, his hand resting on mine. Family is everything. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. Everything, it seemed, except an obstacle to their ambitions. I opened my eyes, my gaze settling on a framed photograph on my desk. It was taken years ago, a family portrait. Myself, Edward, Marcus, Veronica, and Christopher, all smiles and sunshine. We looked happy. Had we ever truly been, or had the seeds of this betrayal been sown long ago, waiting for the right moment to sprout? A flicker of movement caught my eye. Mrs. Henderson, my housekeeper, was quietly setting a plate of biscuits on the table. "Good morning, Mrs. Nelson," she said, her voice soft. "Anything else I can get for you?" "No, thank you, Mrs. Henderson." I replied, managing a smile. She'd been with me for 20 years, a constant presence in a world that felt increasingly unsteady. "You're looking a bit pale, dear," she said, her brow furrowed with concern. "Perhaps you should rest today." I shook my head. "No, I have some business to attend to, if you're sure," she said, her voice laced with a hint of worry. She hesitated for a moment, then quietly left the room. I watched her go, a pang of guilt twisting in my stomach. She was so kind, so loyal. She didn't deserve to be caught in the crossfire of this family war. I picked up the phone and dialed Robert Chen, my attorney. "Robert," I said when he answered, "I need to see you. Today. It's about the will." He agreed without hesitation. There was a steeliness in my voice he recognized, the tone that had always preceded major decisions, the kind that had built my empire. Later that afternoon, sitting in Robert's office, I laid out my plan. He listened intently, his expression shifting from surprise to understanding, and finally to a grudging admiration. "Are you sure about this, Jacqueline?" he asked, his voice grave. "This is a drastic step." I nodded, my resolve unwavering. "They want a war, Robert. They'll get one." I outlined the changes I wanted to make to my will, meticulously detailing how my assets would be distributed. I wouldn't leave them penniless, not entirely. A small trust fund would be established for each of them, enough to live comfortably, but nothing that would allow them to indulge in the lavish lifestyles they'd become accustomed to. The bulk of my fortune, however, would be directed elsewhere. "And what about the Christmas holiday?" Robert asked, flipping through the documents. My children had been planning a grand celebration at my house this year, an event I now realized was likely intended to be a final push in their campaign to declare me incompetent. "Let them plan their party," I said, a small smile playing on my lips. "It'll be the last one they celebrate with my money." I had a surprise in store for them, a Christmas gift they would never forget. One that would expose their greed and leave them with nothing but the bitter taste of their own betrayal. The rain outside had stopped, and a sliver of sunlight pierced through the clouds. It was a small sign, perhaps, but I took it as an omen. The storm within me was beginning to subside, replaced by a sense of calm determination. I would not be broken. I would not be manipulated. I would have my revenge. Rain lashed against the windows, mirroring the storm raging inside me. My own children, Marcus, Veronica, and Christopher, stood in my living room, their faces etched with a chilling blend of impatience and something else, pity. "Mother," Marcus began, his voice dripping with false concern, "we're worried about you. You haven't been yourself lately." Veronica chimed in, "Julian, and I have noticed it too." Julian, Veronika's fiancé, offered a tight-lipped smile that didn't reach his eyes. "We just want what's best for you, Jacqueline." Christopher, always the quietest, simply nodded, his gaze fixed on the antique clock on the mantelpiece, no doubt calculating the minutes until he could get his hands on my fortune. "What's best for me?" I echoed, my voice trembling slightly. "And what exactly do you think that is?" Marcus cleared his throat. "We think it might be time for you to consider assisted living. Somewhere you can get the care you need." Care. The word hung in the air, thick with their unspoken accusations. They thought I was losing my mind, slipping into senility. They saw dollar signs where I saw cherished memories. I looked at them, my own flesh and blood, and felt a wave of nausea wash over me. Assisted living, I repeated, feigning confusion. But I'm perfectly fine here. This is my home. Veronica stepped forward, her hand outstretched as if to comfort a confused child. We know it's hard, Mother, she said softly, her voice laced with condescension. But it's for your own good, my own good. They had the audacity to use those words, to cloak their greed in a veneer of concern. I wanted to scream, to tear at their meticulously crafted facades. But I held back. A flicker of something colder, harder, began to take root within me. I would play their game for now. I understand your concern, I said, my voice regaining its composure. Perhaps you're right. I've been feeling a bit overwhelmed lately. Their eyes lit up, their charade almost complete. Almost. I'll consider your suggestion, I added, a subtle glint entering my eyes. But before I make any decisions, I want to consult with someone impartial. Marcus exchanged a quick glance with Veronica, a flicker of unease passing between them. Of course, Mother, he said, recovering quickly. Whoever you think is best. They left shortly after, their relief palpable. I watched them go, a ghost of a smile playing on my lips. They thought they had won. They thought they had me cornered, vulnerable, ready to surrender my life's work to their grasping hands. They were wrong. As soon as they were gone, I reached for the phone and dialed a number I had memorized long ago. Elena, I said when a crisp, professional voice answered. It's Jacqueline Nelson. We need to talk. Elena Rodriguez was a private investigator I had discreetly hired weeks ago. Sensing the insidious undercurrent of my children's plotting, she had been quietly gathering information, documenting their every move, every whispered conversation. I had a feeling her findings would be illuminating. Ellen arrived promptly the next morning, her briefcase clutched tightly in her hand. She was a woman of few words, her sharp eyes missing nothing. We sat in my study, the curtains drawn against the persistent drizzle outside. I have everything you asked for, Mrs. Nelson, she said, placing a thick file on my desk. I opened it slowly, my hands trembling slightly. The contents were damning. Bank statements showing suspicious transfers between my children's accounts. Emails detailing their plans to declare me incompetent. Even recordings of their conversations discussing how they would divide my assets. Veronica's voice, in particular, was chillingly detached as she discussed selling my house. The house I had lived in for over 50 years, filled with a lifetime of memories. Julian wants a place by the coast, she had said, her voice tinged with excitement. This old place is far too traditional. Traditional. Another word dripping with disdain. I closed the file, my stomach churning. They hadn't just betrayed me, they had dismissed me, erased me. But not anymore. I looked at Helena, my eyes hardening with resolve. Thank you, Helena, I said, my voice steady. This is exactly what I needed. Helena nodded. What's your next move? Mrs. Nelson, she asked. I smiled, a genuine smile this time, one that held no trace of the fragility they had so eagerly projected onto me. I'm going to give them a Christmas they'll never forget, I said, the words hanging in the air, heavy with unspoken promise. They wanted my assets. They wanted to control my life, I would show them what control truly meant. The first flakes of snow began to fall outside, dusting the world in a pristine blanket of white. It was almost Christmas, a time for family, for togetherness. My children were expecting a holiday gathering, a chance to further their charade, 2 inch closer to their goal. They had no idea what awaited them. I had a call to make to my attorney, Robert Chen. He had been working tirelessly on my revised will, a document that would rewrite their future, a future they had so carelessly plotted. The game was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. Rain lashed against the window of my temporary office, blurring the city lights into hazy halos. "Mother, you're losing your grip," Veronica had sneered, her perfectly manicured hand hovering over my arm, as if I were contagious. "It's for your own good." Her words, laced with false concern, echoed in the sterile space Elena Rodriguez, my private investigator, had secured. "We're just trying to help you manage things before they get out of hand." They thought I was slipping, losing my edge, becoming a doddering old woman ripe for the picking. $50 million ripe for the picking. To be exact, my own children, plotting to declare me incompetent. The audacity. "Ms. Nelson, I have something you need to see." Elena's voice cut through my reverie. She gestured to the laptop on the table, its screen illuminating her face with a cool, bluish glow. I pulled myself together, focusing on the task at hand. There, on the screen, was Veronica, not with Julian, her fiancé, but with Marcus and Christopher, my sons. They sat in a dimly lit restaurant booth, huddled together like conspirators. "Are you sure this doctor will cooperate?" Marcus's voice, strained and hushed, seeped from the laptop's tiny speakers. "He's expensive, but discreet," Christopher replied, his tone smooth and reassuring. "And Mother won't suspect a thing." Suspect a thing? They underestimated me. "There's more," Elena said, clicking another file. This one showed Veronica and Julian at a lawyer's office, their faces alight with avarice as they discussed the terms of my guardianship. "They've already drafted the paperwork," Elena explained, her voice tight with controlled anger. "They're planning to file it next week." Next week. They intended to strip me of my rights, my autonomy, my life in a matter of days. A wave of nausea washed over me, my own children. "They talk about your erratic behavior," Elena continued, her eyes fixed on the screen. "Veronica claims you've been forgetting appointments, misplacing things, exhibiting signs of confusion." Confusion, my carefully constructed facade of gentle befuddlement, the subtle slips of memory I'd feigned, had worked perfectly. Too perfectly. It had fueled their greed, their impatience to get their hands on my money. "They've even compiled a list of incidents," Elena added, a flicker of something I couldn't quite decipher in her eyes. "Small things, easily dismissed individually, but together." Her voice trailed off, the implication clear. I stared out the window, the rain now steady downpour. They thought they were so clever. They thought they could outmaneuver me, their own mother. They had underestimated me. Decades of navigating the cutthroat world of business, of building my empire from the ground up, had sharpened my instincts, honed my ability to read people, to anticipate their moves. And I had seen this coming. Perhaps not the specifics, not the sheer brazenness of their betrayal, but the underlying current of greed, The subtle shift in their demeanor, the way their eyes lingered a little too long on my jewelry, my artwork, the deed to my house. I had seen it, and I had prepared. Miss Nelson, Eleanor's voice broke through my thoughts. I turned back to her, a small smile playing on my lips. I want you to do something for me, Eleanor, I said, my voice calm and steady. I want you to gather all the evidence you can. Every meeting, every conversation, every document. I want it all. Eleanor nodded, her expression resolute. Consider it done. Good, I said, rising from my chair, because I have a little surprise plan for my children. They think they're getting my fortune. They're in for a rude awakening. The smile widened, a hint of steel glinting in my eyes. Christmas was just around the corner. It was the perfect time for giving, and I had a very special gift in mind for Veronica, Marcus, and Christopher, a gift they would never forget. The rain continued to fall, washing away the grime of the city, cleansing the air. The storm inside me, however, was just beginning to gather force. Rain lashed against the windows, mirroring the storm inside me. Just hours ago, Veronica, my own daughter, had sat in this very living room, telling me I was losing my grip, that I needed help. Mom, it's for your own good, she'd said, her voice dripping with false concern. We're worried about you, worried about my $50 million, more like. They thought they could just waltz in here, declare me incompetent, and seize everything I'd worked my life to build. They had underestimated me. The house felt colder now, emptier. I walked to the fireplace, the chill seeping into my bones. A fire would be nice, but I couldn't bring myself to light one. The warmth wouldn't reach the icy hollowness inside. They think I'm senile, I whispered to the empty room. They think I'm a doddering old fool. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. I was anything but. I went to the study, the room where I'd spent countless hours poring over financial reports, negotiating deals, building my empire. The desk, usually meticulously organized, was now covered in a chaotic jumble of papers. Dr. Foster's cognitive assessment reports, Robert Chen's legal documents, the revised draft of my will. It's time to play my hand, I murmured, picking up the neurologist's report. Dr. Foster had been thorough, her tests rigorous. The results were unequivocal. I was mentally sharper than most people half my age. Excellent, I said, a flicker of a smile playing on my lips. I spent the next few hours reviewing Robert's meticulously crafted documents. He had anticipated every possible legal challenge, every loophole my children might try to exploit. The new will was simple, direct, and devastatingly effective. They won't see this coming, I thought, a wave of grim satisfaction washing over me. It detailed the establishment of the Nelson Foundation, dedicated to supporting various charitable causes: animal welfare, environmental conservation, medical research. Causes I truly cared about, unlike my children, who only cared about their inheritance. They'll get a pittance, I said aloud, my voice hardening. Enough to survive, but not enough to live the lavish lifestyle they've become accustomed to. I pictured Veronitza's face, Julian's smug grin, when they heard the news. The thought warmed me more than any fire ever could. I imagined Julian complaining to Veronica, "But darling, how will we afford that villa in Tuscany now?" And Veronica, her voice shrill with disbelief, "Mother wouldn't do this. She promised what? I had never promised them anything. They had assumed. An assumption was a dangerous game. The original will, the one they were so eager to enact, had divided my estate equally among my 3 children. They hadn't even bothered to wait until I was gone. They'd wanted it now, while I was still alive, to enjoy the spoils of their imagined victory. Greedy, I muttered, shaking my head. They're all so greedy. The phone rang, startling me. It was Robert. Jacqueline, everything is in place, he said, his voice calm and reassuring. The documents are ready for your signature. We can finalize everything tomorrow. Tomorrow, I repeated, a sense of anticipation building inside me. Yes, tomorrow is good. I hung up the phone, a renewed sense of purpose filling me. I looked out the window. The rain had stopped, and a sliver of moon peeked through the breaking clouds. It was almost Christmas. They had planned to spend the holidays celebrating their ill-gotten gains, toasting their triumph over their senile mother. I imagined them gathered round the fireplace, sipping champagne, discussing how they would spend their newfound wealth. They're in for a surprise, I whispered, a slow smile spreading across my face. This Christmas, they would receive a gift they would never forget, a gift wrapped in legal jargon, tied with a bow of bitter disappointment, a gift that would leave them with nothing but the cold, hard truth of their own greed. This year, Christmas would come early, and it would be a Christmas they would remember for the rest of their lives. The crisp, sterile scent of Dr. Foster's office did little to calm the fluttering in my chest. I sat across from her, a battery of tests spread on the pristine desk between us. "Now, Mrs. Nelson, Doctor," Foster began, her voice gentle yet professional. "I understand this is a rather unusual request. Unusual is one word for it, Doctor," I replied, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. "Necessary is another." I thought of Veronica, her sharp words echoing in my mind from just days before, accusing me of losing my grip, of becoming a danger to myself, a danger to my own fortune. She'd meant, though she hadn't dared say it aloud. Dr. Foster smiled kindly. "Let's just focus on the task at hand, shall we?" The tests began simply enough, matching symbols, recalling number sequences, reciting lists of words. Child's play, really. Years of managing my own business, navigating complex deals, and outmaneuvering ruthless competitors had honed my mind to a razor's edge. This was nothing. Excellent. "Mrs. Nelson, Doctor," Foster commented after the first round, a flicker of something I couldn't quite place in her eyes. "You're doing remarkably well." "I told you, Doctor," I said, a small smile playing on my lips. "My mind is as sharp as ever." We moved on to more complex tasks, spatial reasoning puzzles, verbal fluency tests, even a timed problem-solving exercise involving a hypothetical business scenario. With each completed task, I could sense Dr. Foster's initial skepticism slowly melting away. "This next one is a bit more challenging," she warned, handing me a booklet filled with intricate patterns. "Take your time." I didn't need time. I devoured the patterns, my mind dissecting and reconstructing them with effortless ease. The answers flowed from me precise and confident. "Remarkable, Doctor," Foster murmured, her voice laced with genuine surprise. "Truly remarkable." The hours passed in a blur of questions, answers, and the quiet rustle of turning pages. As the final test drew to a close, I felt a sense of quiet triumph begin to swell within me. I had proven them wrong, proven Veronica, Julian, and all of them wrong. "Well, Mrs. Nelson, Dr. Foster said, gathering the completed tests, "I must say, I'm impressed." She looked at me, a knowing glint in her eyes. "You're clearly in excellent cognitive health." I allowed myself a small, satisfied smile. "I'm glad you agreed, Doctor. This documentation will be quite important very soon." Dr. Foster's expression turned thoughtful. "May I ask what you intend to do with these results?" she inquired. "I have some family matters to attend to," I replied, my voice carefully neutral. "Matters that require absolute clarity of mind." I knew she understood. The hushed whispers, the worried glances, the veiled accusations, they weren't unique to my family. Dr. Foster had undoubtedly seen it all before. Greed, disguised as concern. Betrayal, masked as love. I rose to leave, a renewed sense of purpose coursing through me. I paid Dr. Foster, thanking her for her discretion. As I stepped out into the crisp autumn air, the setting sun painting the sky in hues of orange and gold, I couldn't resist a small, triumphant smile. Veronica and Julian thought they had me cornered. They thought they could snatch my fortune, dismiss me as a senile old woman. They were about to learn a very valuable lesson. I clutched the sealed envelope containing Dr. Foster's official assessment, the paper feeling weighty in my hand. This wasn't just a medical report. It was ammunition, and I knew exactly how I was going to use it. The Christmas gathering was fast approaching, and I had a very special gift prepared for my dear children, a gift they would never forget. The crisp, sterile air of Robert Chen's office was a stark contrast to the stifling atmosphere of my own home these days. "I want to make some adjustments," I said, smoothing the wrinkles of my skirt. Robert, bless his heart, had been my family's lawyer for decades. He knew my children, though not, I suspected, as well as he thought he did. He adjusted his glasses, the faint squeak of the frames a counterpoint to the quiet hum of the air conditioning. "Of course, Jacqueline. What did you have in mind?" I opened my handbag, retrieving a small, worn notebook. Its pages held a lifetime of observations, of little notes and reminders, and now the key to my future peace of mind. "I've been reevaluating my estate plan," I explained, my voice steadier than I expected. "Certain recent events have clarified my priorities." Robert's gaze sharpened. "I understand. It's a difficult time." He didn't know the half of it. Veronika's constant prodding, Julian's oily charm, Marcus's barely concealed impatience. They all thought I was oblivious, a doddering old woman ripe for the picking. Little did they know I was watching, listening, taking notes. "This notebook," I said, tapping it lightly, "contains some specific instructions." Robert reached for it, but I held back. "Not yet. First, I need to confirm a few details regarding the evaluation Dr. Foster conducted." He nodded slowly. "The results came back this morning. Completely normal, as we expected. You're sharp as a tack, Jacqueline." He offered a reassuring smile. I returned a small, tight one of my own. "Good, because I need to be absolutely certain about my faculties for what I'm about to do." I opened the notebook, revealing pages filled with my spidery script. Dates, times, snippets of conversations, amounts a meticulous record of my children's scheming. Veronitza's hushed phone calls with Marcus, plotting about power of attorney. Julian casually suggesting I sell the house and move into a smaller, more manageable place. Christopher's constant inquiries about my investments. It was all there, in black and white. I want to rewrite my will, I stated, my voice firm. Robert blinked, clearly surprised. Completely. He leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking softly. And how would you like to redistribute your assets? I looked him directly in the I want to leave everything to the SPCA. Robert's jaw dropped. He stammered, the animal shelter. I nodded, a small, almost imperceptible smile playing on my lips. Yes, every last penny. My children have shown me where their loyalties lie. I believe my money will be better spent caring for creatures who offer unconditional love, rather than those who see me as nothing more than a walking bank account. Robert recovered his composure, though a flicker of disbelief still lingered in his eyes. He cleared his throat. Are you absolutely certain about this, Jacqueline? This is a significant decision. I've never been more certain of anything in my life, I replied, handing him the notebook. And this, I added, tapping the cover, is why. He took the notebook, his expression shifting from surprise to understanding as he scanned the pages. I see, he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. I see. He spent the next hour drafting the new will, meticulously incorporating my instructions. I watched him work, a quiet sense of satisfaction settling over me. They thought they could outsmart me, their own mother. They thought I was a frail, forgetful old woman, easily manipulated. They were wrong. So very wrong. It's done, Robert said finally, placing the finished document in front of me. I signed it with a steady hand, the smooth glide of the pen across the paper a final, decisive act. As I rose to leave, I paused at the door. One more thing, Robert, I said, a glint in my eye. I want to arrange a special family gathering for Christmas at my house. Robert looked at me, a question in his eyes. I simply smiled. It's time my children received their gifts. The air in Robert's office felt a little less sterile now, replaced by a subtle, almost electric charge. I left, the crisp December air invigorating against my face. Christmas was coming, and I had a feeling it was going to be a very interesting holiday. The grandfather clock in the hall chimed 3 times, a mocking reminder of the precious hours slipping away from my children's grasp. Marcus arrived first, his forced smile a grotesque imitation of affection. Mother, he began, his voice dripping with false concern. We're so glad you're feeling up to this. I simply nodded, a tight knot forming in my stomach. He fussed over the thermostat, then the curtains, his nervous energy filling the room like a noxious gas. Is it too bright in here for you, Mother? We want you to be comfortable. Comfortable? The irony wasn't lost on me. They wanted me comfortable enough to sign away my life. Veronica and Christopher arrived shortly after, Julian trailing behind Veronica like a well-trained puppy. Mom, Veronica chirped, kissing my cheek with an exaggerated smack. We're just so relieved you're finally seeing reason. Seeing reason, in their twisted vocabulary, meant surrendering my independence, my fortune, everything I had built. Julian simply offered a stiff nod, his eyes flitting around the room, calculating perhaps how quickly he could redecorate once I was gone. Christopher, bless his heart, at least looked slightly uncomfortable with the whole charade. He mumbled a greeting, avoiding my gaze. So Marcus clapped his hands together, brisk and businesslike. "Shall we get started?" He gestured to the lawyer they had brought, a slick, sharp-suited man who looked like he specialized in foreclosures and broken dreams. "I believe you have some documents for me to sign, Mother," Veronica said sweetly, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. The lawyer placed a thick file on the coffee table in front of me, its pages filled with legalese and deceit. It was the culmination of their months-long plot, the legal trap designed to declare me incompetent and seize control of my assets. I picked up the pen they offered, the cool metal a stark contrast to the burning anger in my veins. My hand trembled slightly, not from frailty as they assumed, but from the effort of containing my fury. "Before we proceed," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "there's something I need to show you all." I reached for the remote control, my heart pounding in my chest, and switched on the large television screen dominating the wall. The screen flickered to life, displaying a grainy black and white image. It was security camera footage from the hallway outside my study, time-stamped and dated. The image zoomed in, revealing Marcus, Veronica, and Christopher huddled together, their faces illuminated by the dim hallway light. Their voices, though muffled, were clearly audible. "Once we have Mom declared incompetent," Marcus's voice echoed through the room, "we can split the assets 3 ways. I'll finally be able to expand the business," Veronica's shrill voice cut in, "and I can finally buy that villa in Tuscany." Julian and I have been looking at Christopher's voice was quieter, hesitant. "Are you sure about this? It just doesn't feel right." The footage continued, detailing their meticulous plans to paint me as senile, to manipulate doctors, to fabricate evidence. The room was silent, the only sound the whirring of the air conditioner and the damning evidence pouring from the television screen. Their faces, previously smug and confident, were now pale with shock and disbelief. Julian's jaw hung open, his carefully constructed facade crumbling. Veronica stared at the screen, her eyes wide with horror. Christopher, for his part, simply looked down at his feet, shamefaced. Marcus, however, was the first to recover. He sputtered, This is manipulated. It's fake, is it, Marcus?" I asked, my voice laced with ice. "Perhaps you'd like to explain to the authorities how this fake footage corresponds so perfectly with the testimonies of the staff you've been trying to bribe." Their carefully constructed world was collapsing around them, their greed exposed for all to see. I watched their faces, savoring the moment, the sweet taste of revenge a balm to the wounds they had inflicted. I turned off the television, the silence in the room thick and heavy. "I believe," I said, picking up the phone, "it's time we involved the police." The color drained from their faces as they watched me dial. I glanced at the calendar on the wall, a small smile playing on my lips. Christmas was just around the corner, and I had a very special gift prepared for them, one that they would never forget, a gift of justice, served cold. Christmas morning. The scent of pine and cinnamon hung in the air, a stark contrast to the icy tension radiating from my children. Veronica, her fiancé Julian hovering beside her like a nervous sparrow, cleared her throat. "Mother," she began, her voice dripping with false concern, "we're worried about you. Your forgetfulness has become concerning." Julian nodded, his eyes flitting nervously to the elaborately wrapped presents piled under the tree, presents they clearly assumed were soon to be theirs. "We think it's best if you move into assisted living. For your own safety, of course." A flicker of something cold and hard, something I hadn't felt in years, ignited within me. I allowed a frail sigh to escape my lips. "Oh dear, you children worry so. I assure you, I'm perfectly fine." I patted my hand on the armrest of my favorite chair, the one they'd likely already earmarked for their own living room. "Perhaps a bit tired. It's been a busy Christmas season after all." Veronica exchanged a quick, disbelieving glance with Julian. They clearly hadn't anticipated resistance. "Mother," Marcus said, his voice taking on a sharper edge, "we've spoken to Dr. Foster. She agrees that it's time for you to have specialized care." He gestured vaguely towards the hallway, as if a team of orderlies was waiting just out of sight, ready to whisk me away. My sons, Christopher and Marcus, had always been impatient, driven by a hunger they couldn't quite articulate, let alone satisfy. That hunger, I now knew, had fixed itself on my fortune. "Dr. Foster?" I asked, feigning confusion. "I haven't seen her in months." "Perhaps you're mistaken, dear." This small act of defiance seemed to embolden them. They pressed closer, their voices rising in a crescendo of concern that felt distinctly like a threat. They spoke of memory lapses, of misplaced items, of increasingly erratic behavior, all carefully constructed lies, fed to them by my own flesh and blood. I allowed the performance to continue, letting their words wash over me like a chilling rain. They outlined their plans, their voices thick with the thrill of anticipated victory. They'd already chosen an assisted living facility, a sterile, joyless place I knew would crush my spirit. They'd even begun discussing how they would divide my assets, their eyes gleaming with avarice as they inventoried my home, mentally calculating the value of each painting, each antique, each piece of jewelry. Finally, when their self-congratulatory charade reached its peak, I held up a hand, silencing them. "There's something I need to tell you all," I said, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil raging within me. I gestured to a figure standing quietly by the doorway, a woman they hadn't even noticed in their greedy frenzy. "This is Elena Rodriguez, a private investigator." The color drained from their faces. Veronica gasped, Julian's jaw dropped, and my son stared, dumbfounded, as I explained how Elena had been documenting their every move, their every whispered conversation, their every lie. I revealed how they'd manipulated Dr. Foster, coercing her into supporting their fabricated claims. I detailed their plans to declare me incompetent, to seize control of my fortune, to discard me like a broken toy. But how Veronica stammered, her voice barely a whisper. I smiled, a slow, deliberate smile that sent a shiver down their spines. "You underestimated me, my dear," I said. "You thought I was senile, a doddering old woman ripe for the picking. You were wrong." I then revealed the documents I'd prepared with my attorney, Robert Chen, a new will, drafted just days ago, disinheriting each and every one of them. My fortune, the one they'd so eagerly coveted, would now go to various charities, organizations dedicated to causes I believed in. Their faces, contorted in a mixture of shock and disbelief, were a sight to behold. The smug confidence they'd worn just moments before had evaporated, replaced by a raw, primal fear. "You can't do this," Marcus shouted, his voice cracking. "We're your family, I repeated, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. "You stopped being family the moment you decided to betray me. You saw me not as a mother, but as a dollar sign. And now you'll pay the price." The room fell silent, the only sound the crackling of the fire in the hearth, the festive decorations, the twinkling lights, the scent of Christmas all seemed to mock their despair. They had come expecting a windfall, a Christmas miracle of their own making. Instead, they received a cold, hard dose of reality. I stood, my legs surprisingly steady, and walked towards the tree. I picked up a small, exquisitely wrapped gift, the one I had carefully chosen for myself. "Merry Christmas," I said, meeting each of their gazes in turn. "I believe this belongs to me now." I tore open the wrapping, revealing a beautiful antique music box, a symbol of a life they would never touch, a fortune they would never possess. Their expressions, a mixture of anger, resentment, and utter defeat, were the best Christmas present I could have asked for. The game was over, and I had won. Christmas morning, they thought they had me cornered. Veronica, my own daughter, had the audacity to tell me I was losing my grip, slipping into senility. "Mother, it's for your own good," she'd said, her voice dripping with false concern. "We just want to make sure you're taken care of." But I knew better. I saw the greed flickering in her eyes, mirrored in the faces of my sons, Marcus and Christopher. They wanted my money, my house, everything I'd worked my entire life to build. And they were using Julian, Veronic's fiancé, a slick lawyer, to make it happen. The judge cleared his throat, bringing the courtroom back into focus. "Mrs. Nelson," he addressed me, his voice firm yet gentle. "The court has reviewed the evidence presented and heard the testimonies of all parties involved." My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the silence. "Do you have anything further to add before I deliver my verdict?" he asked. "Just this," I said, my voice steady, stronger than I felt. I turned to face my children, their faces a mixture of anticipation and smugness. "You see, children," I began, a small, almost imperceptible smile playing on my lips. "I may be old, but I'm not a fool." I paused, letting my words hang in the air, the weight of them settling on their shoulders like a physical burden. Veronica shifted uncomfortably, Julian's hand tightening on her arm. "You thought you could outsmart me," I continued, my voice gaining strength with each word. "You thought you could trick me into signing away my life, my legacy." I shook my head, a mixture of sadness and disgust washing over me. "You underestimated me." The judge rapped his gavel. "Order, order in the court." He turned his attention back to me. "Mrs. Nelson," he said, after careful consideration, "the court finds you to be of sound mind and body, fully capable of managing your own affairs." A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom. Marcus' face paled. Christopher stared blankly ahead, and Veronica's carefully constructed composure crumbled. Julian, ever the pragmatist, simply frowned, his eyes darting between me and the judge. Furthermore, the judge continued, the court dismisses the petition filed by your children and upholds your right to retain full control of your assets. He banged his gavel again. Case dismissed. I allowed myself a small, private smile. The first act was over, and I had won. But the real performance was just about to begin. Your Honor, I said, my voice clear and strong. If I may, there's one more matter I'd like to address. The judge nodded, granting me permission to proceed. I reached into my bag and pulled out a document I had prepared meticulously with the help of my lawyer, Robert Chen. I'd like to submit a revised version of my last will and testament, I announced, holding up the document for all to see. My children's eyes widened, their expressions shifting from shock to disbelief to outright panic. What? Veronica sputtered, her voice laced with desperation. What is this? It's quite simple, dear, I replied, my voice calm and even. My previous will, the one you were so eager to exploit, is now null and void. I turned to the judge, handing him the document. This new will reflects my current wishes regarding the distribution of my estate. The judge accepted the document, his expression unreadable. He scanned the pages, his silence stretching the tension in the room to breaking point. Finally, he looked up, his gaze sweeping over my children. Mrs. Nelson, he said, this document appears to be in order. He turned to the court clerk. Please file this revised will with the court. But what about us? Marcus stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. I looked at my children, their faces etched with a mixture of confusion and fear. What about your inheritance? Christopher asked, his voice tinged with desperation. I've always been promised, he trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Veronica finally found her voice. Mother, you can't do this to us, she cried, her eyes welling up with tears. We're your family, family. I repeated the word, letting it hang in the air like a hollow echo. You call yourselves family. You plotted against me. You tried to steal from me. You treated me like I was nothing more than a senile old woman. I shook my head, my voice laced with a mixture of sadness and resolve. You forfeited your right to call yourselves my family a long time ago. I paused, letting my words sink in. As for my estate, I continued, my voice gaining strength with each word. I've decided to leave it all to charity. Every last penny. Their faces were a study in disbelief. The shock, the betrayal, the sheer, unadulterated greed. It was all there, painted across their features in vivid detail. Julian, ever the composed lawyer, was the first to recover. Mrs. Nelson, he began, his voice smooth and controlled. I'm afraid this new will is highly irregular. We'll be contesting it, of course. I met his gaze, unflinching. Be my guest, Julian, I said, a small smile playing on my lips. But I assure you, everything is perfectly legal and in order. Robert Chen saw to that. I gathered my things, preparing to leave the courtroom. As I walked past my children, I paused, looking directly at Veronica. Merry Christmas, dear, I said softly, my voice laced with a touch of irony. Then, without another word, I turned and walked away, leaving them standing there, stunned and defeated, amid the wreckage of their own greed. The crisp winter air felt invigorating against my face as I stepped out of the courthouse, a sense of liberation washing over me. The game was over, and I had won. They thought they could steal my Christmas, but in the end, it was I who had delivered the ultimate gift, the gift of justice.